His body hadn't responded to a woman in 3 whole years. Not the supermodels. Not the actresses. Not even the socialite who tried every trick in his bedroom the night before. Ethan Pierce, billionaire, untouchable, feared, and cursed. Then she walked in, a maid. And for the first time since his nightmare began, heat shot through his veins like lightning. One single look at her, and his dead body came alive again. But here's the problem that is about to shake everything he has ever built. She has no idea the power she holds over the most dangerous man in Manhattan. Comment below with your city and location, the narrator teased. Let's see how far this story travels around the world. The next morning began as usual. Meetings, mergers, billion-dollar decisions. Ethan moved through his perfect routine like a programmed machine. Emotionless. Untouched. Empty. His assistant mentioned something about a new cleaning service, but he barely paid attention. Staff came and went in his world like shadows. He was reviewing quarterly reports when she walked in. Marisol Delgado. She moved with a quiet purpose that instantly pulled his eyes off the screen. Unlike the parade of women who usually stepped into his space, women with calculated smiles and strategic movements, she seemed genuinely unaware of his presence. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. Her uniform was plain. But somehow, she looked different from everyone else. She hummed softly as she worked, a gentle melody he didn't know, but it soothed him in a strange way. When she reached for a book on his shelf to dust under it, she paused and read the title with genuine interest. "Excuse me," Ethan said, his voice sounding rougher than he intended. Marisol turned. Their eyes met for the first time. Warm brown. Direct. Unguarded. So honest that Ethan felt something tighten painfully in his chest. She didn't blush. She didn't look away. She didn't flirt. "I'm sorry, Mr. Pierce," she said softly. "I can come back later if you're busy." Her slight accent made his name sound like music. And then, something extraordinary happened. Something that had not happened in 3 long, frustrating years. Heat. A slow, warm, almost forgotten heat spread through Ethan's body, starting from his stomach and rising like a spark turning into fire. His pulse jumped. His breath caught. For the first time since his curse began, Ethan Pierce felt alive. "No," he said quickly. Too quickly. "Please, continue." Marisol nodded and returned to her work. But Ethan couldn't return to his. He watched the graceful way she moved. The way she paid attention to every small detail. The calmness she brought into his usually cold world. When she bent to pick something from the floor, his body reacted so hard he had to grip his desk. This cannot be happening, he thought. Not with her. Not with someone so ordinary. So simple. So real. But day after day, the pattern remained the same. When Marisol walked in, his body awakened. When she left, the numbness returned. He began adjusting his schedule around her cleaning hours. Working from home more often. Finding excuses to be in whatever room she was assigned to clean. "You seem different lately," his business partner, Rose, observed on a video call. "More present." Ethan couldn't explain. How could he say it? That a maid, a woman who probably earned in a year what he spent on wine in 1 month, was the only person capable of making him feel human again? He started noticing the smallest details about her. The way her face lit up when she found a new book on his shelf. How she always placed his coffee cup in the exact same spot every morning. How she spoke to his plants like they were old friends. One afternoon, he found her in his library, standing in front of the huge window with tears streaming down her cheeks. She held a framed photograph, one of the few personal items in his cold, perfect home. It was a picture of him and his late grandmother, the only person who ever loved him with no conditions attached. "I'm sorry," Marisol said quickly, placing the frame back. "I was just dusting in. I saw. She looks kind. Like someone who gave good hugs." The observation was simple, but true. And Ethan felt something crack open slowly in his chest. His grandmother had truly given the best hugs, the only warmth he ever knew during a cold, loveless childhood. "She was," Ethan said quietly, stepping closer. "She died when I was 16. Marisol's eyes softened. "That must have been very hard," she whispered. Her empathy was genuine, simple, without the hidden motives he was used to. Losing someone who really sees you. The word struck him like a physical blow. When was the last time anyone had seen him? Not his money. Not his power. Not what he could provide. Just him. "Yes," he whispered. "It was." They stood in a gentle silence, and Ethan suddenly realized he was standing closer to her than he had stood to anyone in years. Close enough to catch her scent, something warm and clean, like vanilla mixed with sunshine. Close enough to see the tiny gold flecks in her brown eyes. Close enough to feel the soft heat radiating from her skin. His body's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Every nerve ending lit up. His heart slammed against his ribs. His breath grew uneven. For a terrifying second, he thought he might actually reach out and touch her, might close the distance between them. I should get back to work, Marisol said softly. But she didn't move right away. Her eyes lingered on his face, curious, searching, and his breath caught. Of course, Ethan managed, forcing himself to step back before he did something irreversible. As she gathered her supplies and walked to the next room, Ethan knew one thing with absolute certainty. His life had just changed forever. This woman, this beautiful, authentic, impossible woman, was the key to everything he had lost. But what was he going to do about it? If you're already hooked by this forbidden connection, the narrator teased, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will shock you. Ethan became a man obsessed with proving his theory. The next morning, he arranged for 3 different women to come to his office. A famous actress. A brilliant lawyer. A socialite who had chased him for months. All 3 were beautiful, confident, accomplished. And Ethan felt nothing. The actress's practiced seduction landed flat. The lawyer's clever conversation didn't stir even a spark. The socialite's bold touches only irritated him. But the moment Marisol stepped into his penthouse that afternoon, every cell in his body woke up. She was arranging fresh flowers in the foyer, her movements soft and purposeful. When she noticed him watching, she gave a shy, innocent smile, and heat shot through him like fire. The lilies are beautiful today, she said gently, adjusting a stem. They remind me of the ones my grandmother grew back in Puerto Rico. Tell me about her, Ethan said, moving closer under the pretense of examining the flowers. Marisol's face lit up. A Bella Rosa was magical, she said. She could make anything grow, even in poor soil. She used to say plants, just like people, only need someone to believe in them. The innocent words hit Ethan like lightning. When was the last time anyone believed in him, not his wealth, but him? She sounds wonderful, he murmured, his voice thicker than he intended. He was standing close enough to admire the curve of her neck, close enough to inhale that hypnotic scent of vanilla and sunlight that followed her. She was, Marisol said softly, running her fingers lightly across a petal. Ethan's imagination betrayed him. Suddenly he could picture those same fingers on his skin. She taught me that the most beautiful things often grow in unexpected places. Their eyes met. The air between them sparked, quiet, charged, dangerous. Ethan's pulse pounded in his throat. His hands felt restless. His chest rose and fell too fast. Mr. Pierce? Marisol asked gently. Concerned. Curious. Too innocent. Are you all right? He swallowed, stepping back before desire overran reason. I'm fine. Thank you for asking. But he was not fine. He was unraveling. Over the next several days, Ethan found himself inventing reasons to be wherever Marisol was. If she was in the kitchen, suddenly he needed coffee. If she was in the library, urgent reading appeared. If she was in the gym, he miraculously cared about working out. You've been exercising a lot lately, Rose said during their weekly lunch. New trainer? Something like that, Ethan muttered, barely listening. Marisol would arrive soon. And he had timed this meeting to end exactly when she began cleaning his office. The closeness was torture, the sweetest, most dangerous kind. Every day brought new discoveries about her. The way she bit her lower lip when she was concentrating. How she unconsciously swayed to music only she could hear. The spark of genuine joy on her face whenever she found something beautiful or interesting. One afternoon, Ethan found her in his bedroom, making his bed with hospital corners sharp enough to impress a drill sergeant. She was humming again, that same mysterious melody. And Ethan realized he had been holding his breath, just listening. That song, he said from the doorway, making her jump slightly. What is it? Oh. Marisol's cheeks flushed a soft pink. I didn't know you were there. It's something my mother used to sing. A lullaby about finding home in unexpected places. Home. The word slammed into him like a punch. This penthouse had never been home. It was a cold, expensive box where he stored his loneliness. But when Marisol was here, humming, bringing life into dead corners, it felt like something more. It's beautiful, he said, stepping into the room. Your voice. I mean, the song. The compliment made her smile, and that smile lit a fire through his bloodstream. He was close enough now to see her pulse flutter at her throat. Close enough to notice her breathing had quickened. Close enough to realize she wasn't entirely unaffected by him either. The realization struck like lightning. Could she feel it too? This impossible, electric connection that ignored every rule of his carefully controlled world? Marisol, he said her name like a prayer, taking a step closer. Yes? Her voice was barely audible. They were standing beside his bed, close enough for him to feel the heat radiating from her body, close enough to see the gold flecks in her eyes, close enough to count the tiny freckles across her nose like stars. His hand lifted, his fingers trembling inches from her cheek. I don't understand what's happening to me. Mr. Pierce, she breathed, but she didn't step away. Ethan, he whispered. Please. Just Ethan. Ethan, she repeated softly, and his name had never sounded more beautiful. The air between them shimmered. His entire body was alive, every nerve singing with want. He saw the desire mirrored in her eyes. He felt the magnetic pull drawing them closer, closer, closer. This is crazy, he whispered. Yes, she agreed. But neither of them moved. You work for me. I know. I don't do relationships. I don't do feelings. I know that too. Yet they were still moving closer. Ethan's hand finally touched her cheek, and the shock was immediate, explosive, overwhelming. Marisol exhaled softly, her eyes fluttering closed as she leaned into his palm like a flower turning toward sunlight. Marisol, he breathed again, voice cracking. Yes, she whispered, whether in answer or surrender, he couldn't tell. The kiss was inevitable. Soft at first. Tentative. Then deepening into 3 years of pent-up desire bursting free. Ethan felt like a man dying of thirst who had finally found water. Every cell came alive. Every nerve sparked. Marisol's arms slid around his neck, her fingers threading into his hair, and Ethan genuinely wondered if he could survive the intensity of it. This was what his body had been waiting for. Not just desire. Connection. Real. Pure. Soul-deep connection. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Marisol's lips were swollen. Her eyes wide with wonder and fear. Oh, she whispered, touching her mouth with trembling fingers. Oh, Ethan echoed, voice rough. They stared at each other, the weight of what had happened settling heavily between them. His body was still humming, still alive in ways he had forgotten. I should go, Marisol said softly. But she didn't move. Yes, Ethan agreed. But his hands were still on her waist, still holding her close. This can't happen again. No, she whispered. But Ethan was already imagining the next time. I need this job, Ethan. I can't afford to lose it. The truth hit him like ice water. She was right. This was madness. He was a billionaire. She was his employee. The scandal alone would destroy her life long before it touched his. With shaking hands, she stepped away and gathered her cleaning supplies. But even as she left, Ethan knew with absolute certainty. One kiss would never be enough. He had tasted paradise. And he could never return to the desert he once lived in. Marisol, he called as she reached the door. She turned, eyes still wide and full of something fragile. This isn't over, he said quietly. She nodded once, then disappeared. Leaving him with the taste of her on his lips and the knowledge that his carefully controlled world had just shattered completely. What would you do? The narrator asked. Follow your heart, or protect your reputation? Tell me in the comments. For 3 days, Ethan avoided his own home. He buried himself in work with frantic intensity. Back-to-back meetings. A trip to Chicago for a deal he could have closed over the phone. Anything to avoid facing the memory of what happened in his bedroom. But even in boardrooms full of executives, all he could think of was the taste of her mouth. The way she whispered his name like a secret. The way she melted into him. The little gasp she made when he deepened their kiss. Every night in his hotel room, he lay awake replaying every second. By Thursday, Rose was worried enough to corner him after a brutal acquisition meeting. What the hell is wrong with you? She demanded. You just agreed to terms that were highway robbery. The old Ethan would have eaten those guys alive. I'm fine, Ethan said, lying, tugging his tie loose. The hotel room felt suffocating. You're not fine, Rose insisted. You're distracted. Unfocused. Is it a woman? The question hit far too close. Don't be ridiculous. It is a woman. Rose's eyes lit with curiosity. Who is she? Someone I know. There's no woman, Ethan said sharply. But even as the lie left his lips, his phone buzzed with a message from his housekeeper. Miss Delgado asked if you were all right. She seemed worried. Heat surged through him instantly. She was worried. She cared. I have to go, Ethan muttered, grabbing his jacket. Ethan, wait, Rose began. But he was already gone. His body had finally made the decision his mind had been fighting for days. He needed to see her. He needed to know if what happened between them was real, or if he had imagined the whole connection. When he reached the penthouse, it was quiet. But from the kitchen came a soft, familiar humming. His heartbeat thudded like a drum as he followed the sound, his body reacting long before he saw her. Marisol stood at the sink, washing dishes with that same gentle, meticulous care she brought to every task. Her hair was different today, loose around her shoulders, catching the afternoon light like silk. When she heard him, she turned. And the smile that spread across her face was like sunrise. Ethan, you're back. Then softer. I was worried. You were. The words came out rougher than he meant. You left so suddenly, she said quietly. I thought, she bit her lower lip, a tiny gesture that sent fire straight through him. I thought maybe I did something wrong. No, he stepped closer, drawn by a force he couldn't resist. You didn't do anything wrong. Then why did you leave? Because I'm falling for you. Because you terrify me in the best and worst ways. Because one kiss from you was worth more than every dollar I've ever made. I had business to handle, he said instead. Marisol nodded, but he saw it, the flicker of hurt in her eyes. She turned back to the dishes. Her movements were no longer fluid and soft, they were guarded now. Smaller. Careful. Of course, she said quietly. I understand. But she didn't understand. And the new distance in her voice was unbearable. Ethan found himself moving closer, until he was standing directly behind her. He could smell her shampoo, something simple, clean, and warm that made his head spin. Marisol, he said softly. She went completely still, her hands frozen in the soapy water. I didn't leave because of you, he whispered. I left because of me. She turned slightly, confusion clouding her soft brown eyes. I don't understand. I left because, what happened between us? His voice faltered, searching for words. It scared me. She turned fully in his arms when he gently placed his hands around her waist. Her warm brown eyes lifted to his, open, vulnerable, impossibly soft. It scared me too, she whispered. The quiet confession broke something loose inside his chest. Before he could think, before he could remind himself of all the reasons this was forbidden, he was kissing her again. This time, nothing was hesitant. This was hunger. Raw. Explosive. 3 days of denial boiling over. Marisol responded instantly, fiercely, her wet hands gripping his shirt, pulling him closer as if she couldn't get enough. She tasted like coffee and something sweet that was uniquely her. And Ethan genuinely thought he might die from wanting her. This is insane, he gasped against her lips. Completely insane, she agreed, before kissing him again. They might have stayed wrapped around each other forever, drowning in this impossible, breathtaking connection. If not for the sudden ding of the elevator. They broke apart just as Ethan's assistant, Jennifer, stepped out with an armful of files. Mr. Pierce, I didn't expect you back so. Her words cut off sharply. Her gaze swept the room, Ethan's slightly rumpled appearance, Marisol's flushed cheeks, the electric tension that still crackled between them. Jennifer, Ethan said, forcing calm into his voice. What do you need? But Jennifer's sharp, calculating eyes were already scanning details. Marisol's loose hair. How close they had been standing. The guilty color on both their faces. Ethan could practically see the conclusions forming in her mind. I brought the Morrison contracts for your review, Jennifer said slowly, glancing between them. But I can come back later if you're busy. That won't be necessary, Ethan said, his tone firm and clipped. Marisol was just finishing up. The dismissal was unmistakable. And it hit Marisol like a slap. Ethan saw the pain flash across her face before she smoothed it over with professional calm. Of course, she said quietly, gathering her supplies. I'll just get out of your way. She moved past them silently, but Ethan noticed everything. The slight tremor in her hands. The way she held her shoulders stiff and too straight. The hurt she tried to hide. He wanted to call her back. Wanted to tell her she mattered. Wanted to explain everything. But Jennifer was watching, eyes sharp, hungry. Interesting, Jennifer murmured once Marisol was gone. What's interesting? Ethan's voice dropped dangerously low. Nothing, sir. Just, the new cleaning girl seems very thorough. The implication was unmistakable. Rage burned through Ethan's chest, but he couldn't defend Marisol without confirming exactly what Jennifer suspected. The contracts, he said instead, stretching out his hand. Jennifer began laying the papers across his desk. But Ethan wasn't looking at them. His mind was miles away. He was thinking about the hurt in Marisol's eyes. The way she had flinched at his cold dismissal. The way it twisted his chest to pretend she meant nothing, when in truth, she meant everything. Over the next few days, the tension became unbearable. Ethan found himself torn between two worlds. The cold, ruthless business empire where he belonged, and the warm, gentle space Marisol created simply by breathing in the same room. The problem was, those worlds were starting to collide. There are rumors, Rose mentioned casually over lunch at their usual restaurant. Ethan's blood turned to ice. What kind of rumors? About you. And some girl. Rose's voice dropped. Jennifer's been talking, asking questions. You know how fast these things spread. Yes. He knew. In their world, reputation was everything. A scandal could destroy business relationships, crash stock prices, and shatter the immaculate image he had spent years building. And a billionaire caught with a maid? That was tabloid gold. It's nothing, Ethan said, though even he heard the weakness in his voice. Is it? Rose pressed. Because if something is going on, you need to end it now. Before it becomes a problem. That evening, Ethan returned home to find Marisol in his study, dusting his awards and certificates with quiet care. She looked up when he entered, and the tiny flicker of hope in her eyes nearly brought him to his knees. Hi, she said softly. Hi. They stood in silence for a moment, the air thick with everything they weren't saying. Ethan wanted to pull her close, forget the world, drown in her warmth. But Rose's warning echoed in his mind. And Jennifer's smirk. And the weight of his empire. We need to talk, he said. Something in his tone made Marisol's expression fall. She set down her cloth and faced him fully. Okay. This thing between us, Ethan began, hating himself with every syllable, it can't continue. I see. Her voice was calm, too calm, but the pain in her eyes betrayed her. You understand the position this puts me in, he said quietly. The company. My reputation. Of course. Marisol's chin lifted slightly. Your reputation is more important than whatever this is. It's not about importance, Ethan said quickly. It's about reality. We live in different worlds, Marisol. What we want doesn't matter if it destroys everything I've built. Everything you've built, she repeated, barely above a whisper. And what about what we could build together? The question hovered in the air, full of hope and heartbreak. Ethan wanted to say yes. Wanted to choose her. Wanted to choose the warmth over the cold. But his responsibilities, his empire, the weight of expectations pressed on him like chains. I'm sorry, he said finally. Marisol nodded once, sharp, controlled. I understand. You're right. We do live in different worlds. She gathered her supplies quickly, her professional mask snapping into place. But Ethan saw the shimmer of tears she fought to hold back. He felt the pain radiating from her like heat. Marisol, please. It's fine, Mr. Pierce, she said, stressing the formality. I'll keep our interactions strictly professional from now on. She moved toward the door. Something tore inside Ethan's chest. Wait, he called. She paused, but didn't turn. I never meant for this to happen, he said quietly. Neither did I, she whispered. And then she was gone, leaving him with his reputation and his regrets. Even as Ethan tried to convince himself he made the right decision, his body knew the truth. The numbness was back. The cold emptiness. The darkness he thought he had escaped. Without Marisol's warmth, her laughter, her gentle presence, the penthouse felt like a mausoleum again. And somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." The next morning delivered the final blow. Jennifer arrived at his office with a stack of newspapers and a triumphant smile. "You might want to see this," she said as she spread the tabloids across his desk. The headline screamed, "Billionaire's Secret Affair, Pierce's Maid Service from Rags to Riches to Scandal." And on the front page of 3 different papers, a grainy photo of Ethan and Marisol kissing in his kitchen, taken through the window by some opportunistic paparazzi. Ethan's carefully controlled world was collapsing. The boardroom fell silent as he entered. Every face turned toward him, some worried, others barely hiding their satisfaction. The emergency meeting had been called within hours of the scandal breaking. "Gentlemen," Ethan said coolly as he took his seat, pretending nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Newspapers lay scattered across the polished table like accusations. Every headline was another knife. "Ethan," began Richard Blackstone, the eldest board member and Ethan's longtime mentor, "we need to discuss damage control. The stock price has dropped 12%, another voice added. Our investors are panicking. The Yamamoto deal is in jeopardy, someone else said. They don't want to be connected to this kind of publicity. Ethan listened silently as disaster after disaster was listed. This was what he feared. What he tried to prevent by pushing Marisol away. But it had happened anyway. And now he was losing everything, his reputation, his investors, his empire. There's only one solution, Richard said gravely. You need to end this immediately. Publicly. Fire the girl, said another board member. Have your lawyers prepare a statement denying any serious relationship. Say it was a misunderstanding. A moment of weakness. Throw her under the bus, someone else agreed. It's the only way to salvage your reputation. Ethan stared at the photographs scattered across the table. Images of him and Marisol, captured in their most intimate moment, their faces soft with love, desire, and something deeper, something real. Even in the grainy, stolen pictures, their connection was undeniable. Ethan, Richard prompted gently. What's your decision? For 3 long years, Ethan had lived in emotional exile. He convinced himself that feeling nothing was safer than risking everything. He built walls so high no one could touch him. He crafted a life so perfectly controlled there was no room for messiness, vulnerability, or love. Throw her under the bus, another board member urged. It's the only way to save your reputation. Ethan's jaw tightened. Richard leaned forward. Think carefully. Your reputation. My reputation. Ethan gave a short, humorless laugh. What good is a reputation built on lies? What's the point of being respected if I can't respect myself? He rose to his feet, straightening his tie with calm, steady hands. I've spent my entire adult life building walls and calling it strength. I convinced myself that being untouchable was the same as being powerful. I was wrong. The board stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. Strength isn't avoiding vulnerability, Ethan continued. It's choosing love even when it terrifies you. It's being brave enough to let someone matter more than your image. You're about to throw away everything you've worked for, someone protested. No, Ethan said firmly. I'm finally choosing something worth working for. He gathered the newspapers. His eyes lingered on the photo of him and Marisol. Even in scandal, they looked happy, they looked real. I'm calling a press conference, he said. Ethan, please, Richard begged. The decision is made. He walked to the door, then paused. Ladies and gentlemen, if any of you have a problem with my choices, feel free to take your investments elsewhere. I won't apologize for falling in love. The silence that followed him out of the boardroom was deafening. Ethan found Marisol in the small Queen's apartment she shared with her sister. She opened the door in jeans and an oversized sweater. Her eyes were red, her face exhausted. When she saw him, her expression crumpled. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted to hurt your career. Stop. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. You have nothing to apologize for. But the newspapers, the scandal. None of it is your fault. He took her hands. Relief washed through him when she didn't pull away. Marisol, what I said the other night about ending this, I was wrong. I was scared. And stupid. And wrong. Ethan. I love you, he said, the words coming out in a rush. I love your laugh, your kindness, your voice when you hum, the way you see beauty in everything. I love how you make me want to be a better man. Tears slid down her cheeks. I love you too, she whispered. But that doesn't change anything. Your world, my world. There is only one world that matters, Ethan said gently. The one we create together. He pulled her into his arms. She melted against him, like she belonged there. I'm holding a press conference this afternoon, he murmured. I'm going to tell the world that I'm in love with you. And anyone who has a problem with it can go to hell. You can't do that, she gasped. Your reputation, your business. They'll survive. Or they won't. His voice softened. But I won't survive losing you again. Ethan, be serious. Think of what you're risking. I am thinking, he said, cupping her face. I'm thinking of a life with someone who loves me for who I am, not what I own. I'm thinking about waking up to your smile. I'm thinking about building something real. And if you lose everything, she whispered. He smiled, a true smile, warm and alive. Then we'll build something new together. The press conference was a full-blown media circus. Reporters packed the hotel ballroom. Cameras flashed like explosions. Questions flew like arrows. Mr. Pierce, are you having an affair with your maid? How long has this relationship been going on? Is this a publicity stunt? Ethan stood tall at the podium, Marisol beside him in a simple blue dress that made her look like royalty. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, I call this conference to address the recent coverage of my personal life. Silence swept the room. It's true that I'm in a relationship with Marisol Delgado. It's true she works for my cleaning service. What the tabloids got wrong is calling it a scandal. He turned toward her, and every camera caught the softness in his eyes. This is the woman I intend to marry. The room erupted. Questions crashed over them, but Ethan held up a hand. Marisol is the most extraordinary person I've ever known. She has taught me that real wealth isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in connection, authenticity, and courage. A reporter shouted about stock prices. Ethan ignored it. I won't apologize for falling in love with someone who doesn't fit your narrow definition of appropriate. The only thing I regret is not realizing sooner that love is the only thing that truly matters. He laced his fingers with hers. Her eyes glistened with tears and pride. Marisol Delgado will be my wife. If anyone has a problem with that, they are free to take their business elsewhere. I'd rather be broke and in love than rich and empty. He led her off the stage as cameras flashed wildly. That was either brave, Marisol whispered, or insane. Probably both, Ethan laughed, pulling her close. Any regrets? Only one. His heart dropped. What is it? That you didn't kiss me in front of all those cameras. Ethan laughed, a real, joyful laugh he hadn't felt in years. I can fix that, he said. And he did, right there in the back of his car, paparazzi snapping photos outside. Let them look. Let them record it. Ethan Pierce had finally found something worth more than power. He'd found love. 6 months later, the wedding was small and perfect. Held in the garden of Ethan's grandmother's home, the one place that ever felt like safety. Marisol wore her grandmother's dress. Ethan had never seen anything so beautiful. As they exchanged vows under a canopy of roses, Ethan thought about his journey. Some business partners had left, but the ones who mattered stayed. His stock had dipped, but recovered, and soared. A happy Ethan Pierce was a powerful Ethan Pierce. Love didn't weaken him. It made him invincible. I love you, Mrs. Pierce, he whispered during their first dance. I love you too, Mr. Pierce, she replied. Even if you are completely crazy. Crazy about you, he said, spinning her as their guests laughed. Later, on the terrace of their honeymoon suite, Ethan held her close as the ocean breeze kissed their skin. A year ago he felt nothing. Now he felt everything, joy, passion, hope, and a love so deep it stole his breath. What are you thinking about? Marisol whispered. Just us. How you saved me. I didn't save you, she said softly. You saved yourself. I just believed in you. Ethan kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of vanilla and sunshine that would forever mean home. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For seeing me. For loving me. For teaching me that the best things in life can't be bought. They can only be felt. Marisol smiled, glowing, radiant. You know what the best part is? What? This, she wrapped her arms around him. This is just the beginning. And as Ethan kissed his wife under a blanket of stars, he knew she was right. They had found their fairy tale ending, but more importantly, they had found their real beginning. Together, they could face anything. Scandal. Judgment. Differences. Challenges. Because love, real, honest love, is the most powerful force in the universe. And they had it in abundance. Moral of the story. True love requires courage. Reputation fades, wealth can crumble, but the people who see your soul are worth fighting for. Real strength is choosing love even when the world tells you not to. The end.